Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan, and this is Parasitic Alien Species, Strangers from Dark City. 1998. Explained. In 1998, Alex Proyas released his noir sci-fi film, Dark City.
No, you must listen to me. You have lost your memory. There was an experiment. Something went wrong.
Which appealed greatly to sci-fi fans in general. But the more ardent lovers of films were surprised how the film changed and evolved the meaning of being human. Proyas' film merged the horror and sci-fi genres and wrapped them under the cloak of a fine detective story. The film essentially asks, what are the ingredients that make us human, and can those ingredients be changed to understand or even replicate our humane nature? And to answer this question, a band of highly intelligent aliens called strangers creates an artificial world to replicate a more realistic society. Furthermore, the strangers would use all humans as subjects of their experiments, and of course, the humans don't have the faintest idea about it. Because the strangers were a dying race, they thought that the individuality of humans could be the cure for their extinction. Naturally, they wanted to know how the human mind worked. Are we simply the sum of our memories? Or is there something else that makes us human? But every once in a while, there arises a weapon, a resistance that changes the sequence of events, because they are the ones who can see what really is going on. Dark City is really one of those hidden gems that gets lost in the sand of time, but Marvelous Videos exists to unearth these masterpieces and bring them solely for you. So, let's explore this beautiful piece of work, and then dive deeper into the epic villains called the Strangers, who are as violent and sadist as they are tragic victims of fate. Before we get into today's explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks. Now, let's begin. Forget the sun. Forget time. Forget your memories. Welcome to Dark City. The film begins in a hotel room where one John Murdoch wakes up naked with his forehead bleeding in a bathtub. It soon turns out that Mr. Murdoch was suffering from a psychotic breakdown and amnesia. He puts on his clothes and walks out of the bathroom, only to receive a call from one Mr. Daniel Schreiber, who warns Murdoch about the group of men wanting him dead. But this grave warning soon became less critical to Murdoch when he notices the corpse of a woman killed in a ritualistic murder. Murdoch feels dread and leaves the room, only to discover that Schreiber's warning held truth. He narrowly escapes a few pale men wearing trench coats. After much struggle, he learns his own name, and other things like his wife Emma, his possible connection to a town called Shell Beach, etc. Meanwhile, Police Inspector Frank Bumstead learns about the girl's murder, and it is revealed that it is only the latest of a string of similar murders committed in the city, possibly an activist serial killer. Since the woman was found dead in his hotel room, Murdoch becomes the prime suspect of the murders. Meanwhile, the men in black trench coats are in hot pursuit. And when they finally find him, it is revealed that Murdoch can change reality using his imagination, a power that his pursuers called tuning. Murdoch manages to kill one of them named Mr. Quick and flees from the scene. But right before fleeing, he saw how an organism came out of the skull of one of the men before dying. By now, it must be amply clear to you that these men are in fact the strangers that this video is all about. They are a part of an organization that lives underneath the city, a form of parasitic brotherhood that uses dead humans as vessels. There are a few peculiar things to notice here. For example, the city is full of confusing acronyms, which are mostly reflected in the diverse architecture. Furthermore, the shops and other businesses are named by their description. For example, the hotel is simply called Hotel, the barber shop is Barbershop, and the food automat is called, well, you guessed it right, Food Automat. These places have no real identity to them. Isn't that strange? Furthermore, the city has a perpetual nighttime, and none of the residents seem to notice it, apart from Murdoch, of course. And then there's the town of Shell Beach, which everyone is acquainted with, but no one seems to recall how to reach Shell Beach. Furthermore, at midnight, Murdoch finds himself still searching for answers. But he notices something stranger. Everyone goes to sleep at midnight, and the buildings start to change and evolve. This was the work of the Strangers, who were working at the behest of their leader, Mr. Book. They were using a huge machine to tune the city and its people according to their convenience. Dr. Schreiber was secretly working with the Strangers, and with his help, one of the Strangers, named Mr. Hand, injects himself with Murdoch's memories, so that those memories could help him find Murdoch. In due course of time, Bumstead and Emma save Murdoch from the strangers, but Bumstead takes him into custody. During the interrogation, Murdoch poses some striking questions, and Bumstead starts to question his reality as he knows it. When the strangers attack the police station, Bumstead frees Murdoch, and they confront Dr. Schreber, who tells him that the strangers are aliens with a hive mind, who are on the verge of extinction. In order to find clues to the survival of their own kind, they abducted humans and placed them in the city. They changed the memories of the people in the city so as to learn more about the human behavior, and more specifically, the human soul, which they believe is the key to their survival. Furthermore, when a person is imprinted with other memories, he's supposed to sleep, but the subject wakes up once in a blue moon. Murdoch was one such anomaly, and he gained the psychokinetic powers that the strangers share. It's this psychokinesis that helps the strangers to alter reality. The three of them then embark on a journey to find Shell Beach, but end up at the edge of the city, only to find out that the city is actually floating in space. However, with Dr. Schreber's help, Murdoch learns about the true extent of his powers and kills the stranger leader, Mr. Book, in a climactic psychokinetic battle. In the end, he transforms the city, creates the Shell Beach, and turns the city's direction towards a star, so that the city can receive sunlight. We really couldn't explore the great many details of the film that it provided to build and support the story. It was important to leave things to your imagination and viewing. This beautiful and generous film lives and breathes in the film noir of the 1940s, and yet the city is filled with acronyms like old cars, automats, neon cigarettes, etc. One never figures out which era it was that the characters were living in, and the credit for this wondrous sense of confusion goes to director Proyas and co-writer David S. Goyer, who had also written the story to Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. Both the films seem quite similar in their visual style. Dark City is one of those few films that change the way directors tell their stories. It serves as some sort of a paradox in the way that it's both confusing but also comprehensible. Dark City essentially has two plot elements. First, the blurred line between reality and imagination. We know from the beginning that the strangers are executing an intricately elaborate plan, something unimaginable to the human mind, but we don't understand what it truly is. And second, the love story between Rufus Sewell as John Murdoch and Jennifer Connelly as Emma Murdoch. So, even though the strangers injected a story, a memory into Emma's mind about loving Murdoch, they can never figure out how love truly feels, because it's not something that's entirely controlled by our brains. There are emotions and feelings involved. To be in love is to feel from the soul, not the brain. But this, the strangers couldn't understand. And in the end, we end up feeling a bit sympathetic towards the strangers, as their race gets extinct because of their failure to understand love, and they died due to hate amidst people who loved, who truly loved. Nevertheless, let's now explore the strangers from Dark City. Beings who were supremely powerful, but had an equally tragic life.
Power, consciously. Let me help you, John. Together we can stop them. We can take the city back.
The strangers' parasitic alien species. By now, it must be abundantly clear to you that the strangers were enormously powerful and had infinite advanced technology. And yet, the hive mind species was on the brink of extinction. They figured out that the individuality of humans was the only way in which their species could survive and flourish. So, in order to understand the basis of human individuality and his uniqueness, well, they started to experiment with humans. They believed that it all originated in the human soul, which resulted from the human psyche, and more specifically, the human brain. But more on that later. Because before we begin to explain their objective and mode of operation, it is crucial to learn about their true form. The strangers look like bald, pale, Nosferatu-like humans, who dress in black trench coats and possess eccentric mannerisms. However, this is just a facade, a vessel to hide their true selves and interact with humanity. In reality, the strangers are smaller jellyfish-like organisms that have tentacles, like a bunch of angry noodles. These parasitic organisms take over human corpses and reside in the skull cavity, essentially controlling the body and keeping it from deteriorating. Furthermore, because of being so delicate, if the human skull that they reside in gets damaged, it leads to a quick death for the strangers. Also, they could not withstand moisture and sunlight, which was why they ensured that the city was kept in a direction away from the light of a nearby star. Interestingly, the humans never seemed to notice the perpetual nighttime, because the strangers made everyone sleep at midnight, which probably rebooted their memories. Because Murdoch didn't sleep when the clock struck 12, he could realize that he hadn't seen the daytime in days. As far as their personality and behavior are concerned, strangers live in a society of sorts and assemble like a Senate-like congregation to discuss matters of importance or transform the city. Although they have a hive mind, they are divided into hierarchies, and Mr. Book seems to be their leader, while Mr. Hand serves as a general of sorts, who leads the action on the field. Whenever they assemble together, their psychokinetic powers merge together, and this combined force is immensely potent. However, each stranger has some degree of psychokinetic power, and it seems like Mr. Book is the most powerful of them all. It was revealed in the film that when Murdoch woke up midway during his memory implant, he gained the power of the strangers, and eventually evolved from a human to a stranger. To oversimplify it, we can say that he was the bridge between humans and strangers. The personalities that individual strangers share are not very distinct from each other, but yes, they all developed various eccentric traits in terms of language, behavior, movement, etc. When not talking to each other in English with an unnerving monotone, we find that the strangers communicate through the chattering of their teeth. Now, the chattering also happens because they are all assembled in the underground laboratory for tuning. The most peculiar of these would be Mr. Sleep, who looks like a little kid, but was the most sadistic of all the strangers. Not only did Mr. Sleep bite on Murdoch's hand when he was hanging from the door of a building, but he was also the first one to demand Murdoch's execution when he was captured. Interestingly enough, Mr. Sleep was played by twins Satya Gumbert and her brother Noah Gumbert. It's fairly difficult to spot the difference, but the kids knew very well how to portray such an evil character. The past of the strangers and what circumstances led their species to their dwindling numbers is largely unknown. We don't even know anything particular about their home planet, or even their species' true name. However, we do know that their hive mind was smart enough to leave their homeworld and form a colony of sorts on an extraterrestrial object, possibly a small asteroid. They created an artificial city on the celestial body and started to abduct humans from Earth and place them into this new city. They believed that the cure for their impending doom was the individuality of humans against their collective society. It is highly possible that they looked up to the feats of humans as a species achieved, how they developed scientifically in a matter of a few thousand years. You see, a hive mind is both powerful and weak at the same time. While everyone else gains from the knowledge of one individual, there is little scope for innovation and thinking, because one is not entirely free to think alone. So they abducted humans and started to study them, their behavior and psychology. But they came to realize that the human soul played a larger part in honing the personality, and the strangers couldn't understand what the soul was, or even how it worked. So, to further their plan, they enlisted the help of Dr. Daniel P. Schreber, a psychologist whose memories they erased, all but his memories about his scientific knowledge and personality. This ensured that he never discovered a way back to Earth. Although Schreber served them and followed their orders, he hated the strangers and constantly plotted to end their menace. The doctor would implant people with new memories as prescribed by the strangers, which were usually a mix of memories, such as a troubled childhood, an unfortunate and untimely death of a family member, etc. On the other hand, a poor man may be implanted with the memories of a rich man, and vice versa. As for their surroundings and environment, the strangers would alter them to suit their memories. David P. Schreber's name is interesting because his namesake used to be a German judge who was suffering from 3 mental illnesses, including paranoid schizophrenia. During his days at a mental institution, he penned a book titled Memoirs of My Nervous Illness, which was supposed to prove that he was of sound mind and serve as his argument for release. Anyway, Schreber would be employed to study various aspects of the human mind, and one day the strangers decided to study what role memory played in free will. Would a man implanted with a serial killer's memory continue with the killing, or would he give in to his natural instincts and never kill? For this purpose, the strangers chose John Murdoch, our protagonist. However, John woke up while the experiment was still in progress. Although Schreber deleted Murdoch's earlier memories, Murdoch woke up briefly, and Dr. Schreber couldn't plant the memories of the serial killer inside him. John had become a stray, someone who resisted the sleep that the psychic strangers had induced. Now, while most of the strays suffered mental breakdowns from the knowledge that they had gained and the things they had seen, Murdoch turned out to be different. He had evolved into something more, something of an amalgamation between a stranger and a human. And with the best of both worlds, Murdoch could do whatever he wanted. Only he had to concentrate hard enough. And Murdoch defeated them all, including their leader, Mr. Book, after which he went on to transform the city into the idyllic Shell Beach, and also turned the city around towards a star, so that the eternal night, Dark City, could come to an end. New TV series based on the sci-fi movie Dark City, 1998. Today, Dark City is celebrated as one of the finest films by a dedicated cult audience, and we believe that the film would have performed far better financially had it been released in a slightly different cinematic timeline, say in the late 2000s. It did inspire several other films like Christopher Nolan's Inception and Lana and Lily Wachowski's The Matrix trilogy, which even bought the set pieces of Alex Proyas' Dark City. Now that we are seeing a revival of many 80s and 90s films, including The Matrix, well, it feels like the best time for Dark City to return to the screens. And thankfully, Alex Proyas recently confirmed to a media house that he was in the process of developing a Dark City television series. While there is no piece of information available regarding the cast, story, or any of it for that matter, Proyas has confirmed that he was going back and forth with his film, analyzing what he did correctly and where he faltered. So let us hope that the project doesn't get burned away in the developmental hell and survives to come to life. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to send a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. For marvelous videos, I'm Rylan. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks for watching.